Welcome back with a smiling face. Important note before starting: if you are a fan of audio stories, then our Patreon account is the best platform for you. Join us on Patreon for the best audiobooks ever. His Revenge. Episode 7. Azalea. What are you doing up so early, my alpha? I asked him. His hands came to rest on my hips. I never went to bed, he admitted. What happened? We found another group of misplaced wolves at our borders last night. You could have woken me up, I scolded him. He gave me a weak smile and kissed my forehead. No, little Luna. You were tired and needed rest, he said. I reached my hand up to cup his cheek. So do you. You can't lead this pack if you never take a minute, I reminded him. How about I take this afternoon off when we go to your checkup, he said. All right, I agreed. He left me to get dressed, and I promptly remembered my urgent bladder with a small kick from the baby. Liam and I were sitting in his office. We needed to discuss a few things, but he seemed nervous about it for some reason. I patiently waited for him to finish reading through last night's patrol report, letting my mind wander aimlessly. Felix and another warrior took the kids to the park while Missy and Maddox went on a run together. She convinced him to take the day off from training after spending every waking moment of the past few days working out. Someone knocked on the door. Come in, Liam grunted, not taking his eyes off the paper in his hands. Lacey popped her head. Luna, there you are, she said with a smile. What can I do for you, Lacey? Do we have any more spare clothes for teenage girls? There are 2 in the group that arrived last night, she asked. Oh yes, I am sure we have something. Ask Lily to take you downstairs to the storage room off the laundry, I told her. Lacey dived in and started helping this morning with getting the new wolves situated, which I was grateful for. We haven't given her an official job, so I wasn't sure if she wanted one or not. Great. Thank you, she said, smiling. If you need any help with things, please don't hesitate to ask. I worked for my former alpha for a long time. Actually, Liam said, looking up. Her attention moved to him. I need some help compiling all the different information we have on some possibly related occurrences. Easy, she said. Lacey, you don't have to if you don't want to, I told her. No. I would love to. It will give me something to keep busy with while Felix is working, she said with a bright smile. I'll have Damien get you everything this afternoon, Liam said, going back to his report. Perfect, she said before heading out the door. I let silence permeate the room once more, but then my impatience won over. All right, what is it that you need to speak with me about? And we never discussed requesting Theodore's assistance last night. Liam sighed and set down his paperwork. I stood and slowly moved over to him. He turned his chair and opened his arms so I could awkwardly sit on his lap. My round belly was becoming a hindrance to intimacy. You were asleep, so we could not discuss all the reasons why I should not willingly invite a vampire so close to my pack house and so far into my territory, he said. I glowered at him. He is knowledgeable about both his race and ours. He may know what to expect and what we should do to help Hiram, I argued. Liam shook his head. Let's discuss this later. Your new bodyguard will be here any minute, he said. My eyebrows rose in interest at his words. And who will that be? Do I know them? I asked. Liam didn't get to answer because a heavy knock sounded on the door before it swung open. Robert was standing in the doorway with a stern look on his face. I turned to Liam, trying to mask my shock and simultaneous rage. Liam. I linked him. I had no choice. My father and Declan will be taking turns watching over you for the time being, he replied. So, you waited until moments before I arrived to tell your mate? Robert said dryly. Thanks for coming, Liam said. His father just nodded. I plastered on the best Luna smile I could muster. Liam turned to me. I will see you this afternoon. I will come to collect you when we need to leave for your appointment. Don't think this discussion is over, Alpha, I linked him before rising from his lap and breezing from the room. Chapter 51. Missy, how have you gotten so much faster in only a couple of weeks? I asked Maddox as we emerged from the trees, both fully dressed. I was still panting from my struggle to keep up with him. I told you I was serious about protecting the Alpha family, he laughed. We strolled across the lawn, heading towards the pack house for lunch. Both of us were starving after our run all morning. When we woke up this morning, I was immediately struck with fear realizing that we had cuddled all night. We stayed up late talking. I confided in him what happened with Vlad, and he was a good friend by just listening to my troubles. Somehow though, there was no awkwardness at all. We both woke and started our day like it was normal for a couple of teenage kids to sleep together like that. At my request, Maddox was taking the day off but wanted to let his wolf out, so we went running. A warrior was sent after us to watch me, but he kept his distance, and we just ignored him. Maddox's hand brushed against mine as we walked. We aren't racing anymore. You now have an unfair advantage. Especially after all the private lessons with Felix, I told him. And your dad, he said with a cheesy grin. His fingers slowly intertwined into mine, taking advantage of my momentary shock. What? You trained with Liam? I asked stupidly. Yeah. Before everything happened, he showed up and watched Felix and me for a bit before stepping in himself. He's incredible, he said easily. He acted as if he wasn't taking private fighting lessons from the Alpha and casually holding his daughter's hand as we openly walked into the pack house. I bit my lip as my eyes darted down to our fingers. I was slightly conflicted because V and I left things sort of unresolved. His words felt like a breakup, but he didn't outright dump me. Plus, Maddox made me feel good in a different way than V did, a more effortless way. I think my muscles could use a dip in the pool. What do you think? Lunch then some swimming. We can do a movie marathon after dinner to round out the day. Maddox said as we entered the dining room. I looked up at him to see his face drop into a scowl, and his hand let go of mine. I followed his line of sight to see V waiting at the opposite side of the room. I swallowed the lump that immediately formed in my throat. I had put all my energy into making sure Maddox was okay, I hadn't gotten very far in my Vlad dilemma. Maddox bent over just enough to whisper in my ear, I'll grab us some lunch. Meet me outside when you're done. He walked away, leaving me standing alone in the middle of the dining room. V pushed off the wall and sauntered towards me. He stopped a few feet from me. Luckily, there were not many people in the dining room for lunch yet, and no one was paying attention to us. Can we talk? He asked. Sure, I managed to squeak out. I turned on my heel and walked out of the dining room. As we got out to the hallway, V grabbed my elbow and pulled me towards the hallway leading down to the laundry room. He stopped about halfway down the hall, dropping my arm. I stood looking at the ground, not sure where this was going to go. I'm sorry, he started. I stilled slightly but didn't look up at him. I crossed the line. You aren't a slut, Missy. I clenched my jaw, anger rising in my chest. I was just frustrated. I want to be the one you rely on and the one that holds you when you cry," he trailed off. I could feel his eyes on me, and I knew he was waiting for me to say something, but my anger blinded me. "So what? You come to say sorry, and I just hop right back into your arms." I spat. Vlad blanched slightly. "No, I just..." I looked up at him now. His face looked contrite, but this didn't go away too easily. "Just stop. Vlad, that was the scariest day of my life. My brothers were kidnapped. One of them got hurt. But all you cared about was who actually got me into the safe room. Not that it matters, but I can't remember much from that span of time. I have no idea where you even were. But I am to blame for this." I was shouting now. It was probably a good thing we were away from people. "You aren't to blame. I know you were afraid. I hated seeing you like that," he tried. "Then what were you doing?" He looked away from me, his eyes blinking rapidly. "I know you aren't going to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I didn't mean any of it. I was frustrated, and it isn't your fault. You aren't a slut. I shouldn't have said that." "I'm really sorry," he said in a low voice, unable to make eye contact now. Silence stretched between us for a long minute. "I will let you get back to your lunch," he said, pausing on the last word. He gave me a brief glance, hurt evident in his eyes, before he turned and walked away. I stayed rooted to the spot for a minute, trying to calm myself down. "You okay, Missy?" Maddox linked me. With a heavy sigh, I headed back. That sure resolved everything. Yeah. Be there in a section. Azalea. With all the amazing technology we have, one would think that doctors would not require pregnant women to have a full bladder when they come for an ultrasound appointment. Shouldn't we have evolved past this terrible practice? Neither of us was happy about this arrangement clearly. Although we are amicable to each other, Robert and Lissa will never be my favorite people. They are good grandparents to my children, which is the most important thing to me. I groaned softly, dropping my head into my hands. I reached down and rubbed my belly softly, willing my child to calm themselves. I sigh, looking back up at Robert, who just stares at me. For no reason at all, his presence is irritating me. He has stood at the door, watching me with his arms crossed since we got here. "What's wrong, little Luna?" Liam links me. "You want the list?" I reply haughtily. "Can I help, baby? Removing your father from my office would be a great start." "Azalea," he groaned. He was almost as frustrated by this arrangement as I am, but probably for different reasons. "Please tell me we can leave soon? If we don't get this over with so I can pee, I may actually burst," I whined. "Why don't I call my uncle and see if we can come a bit early? Please." He didn't respond right away. He knew getting into our appointment early would relieve me of his father sooner and bring me closer to the release of my bladder. "All right, little Luna. I'll come get you in 10 minutes. The car will be waiting downstairs for us," he finally linked. I began putting all my things away on my desk in excitement. Robert shifted. "Oh, Robert. Liam will be coming in a few minutes. Thank you for staying with me. I am sure you can head home to Lissa now," I said as sweetly as I could. He just rolled his eyes. "Nice try. Those aren't the rules," he grumbled. "Really, if something were to happen in the few minutes that I would be alone in my office, then don't we have a bigger problem than my fragility?" I prompted. He breathed out a small snort. "You would, indeed," was his response. I gave up my attempt and finished packing my things away. Luckily, I didn't have to wait the entire 10 minutes before Liam was rushing through the door. "Ready?" he asked excitedly. His smile was infectious, even if I was still frustrated. I nodded. He turned to his dad. "Thanks, Dad. I appreciate the help. I will see you in a couple of days," he said. His father nodded before he left us alone. "Can we go now?" I asked as I pushed myself up from my chair. I came around my desk, and Liam held his arm out so I could hold on to him. "All right, Azalea, let's take a look at this pup," Dr. Ron said as he ran the ultrasound wand over the cold jelly already on my bare skin. Liam sat next to me with a giant smile on his face, holding my hand while he impatiently waited. I don't know if I was more excited to see the baby or if I was more excited to see Liam so jovial. Liam's eyes were glued on the small screen of the ultrasound machine as Dr. Ron moved the wand about, taking a look at the baby from varying angles. "So," he said after a few minutes. "Do we want to know the gender this time around?" "Yes," Liam said. "No," I said at the same time. Dr. Ron chuckled. Liam looked at me incredulously. "Little Luna, why don't you want to know the gender?" "Because it doesn't matter. You said it yourself, you will love it either way, so why not let our last one be a surprise? Why don't I put it in an envelope, and if you change your mind, Azalea, you can take a look," Dr. Ron suggested. "That will be great," I said with a smile. Liam was pouting. "All right, Alpha, how about some photos?" "Yes, let's see that pup," he said, his mood returning mostly. Dr. Ron showed us the baby and gave us 4 photos to take home. When he was done, Liam helped me up from the table so I could finally empty my bladder. When I got back to the room, Dr. Ron had a few more things to talk to us about. I sat down next to Liam, who wrapped his arm around me while we waited for Dr. Ron to start. "So, I think it is about time that you consider bed rest, Luna," he started. I blinked a few times, my brain trying to catch up to my ears. "I feel fine," I said. "Yes, but I have a few concerns about both you and the pup," he explained. "The baby is a little small for this point in the pregnancy." "What does that mean?" Liam asked. "Well, it could be no big deal, or it could be cause for concern. I just want to monitor the pup a little more closely from here on out. And it would be best if Azalea's body could use all of its energy for growing the baby." Liam squeezed me slightly. "We'll make sure she is off her feet as much as possible," he said. We were both quiet on the way back to the pack house. I held the ultrasound pictures as well as the sealed envelope containing the gender in my lap. "This isn't the end of the world, little Luna," Liam said as we pulled up to the front of the pack house. "What if something's wrong with our pup?" I whispered. He put the car in park and turned to me. "We're going to do everything we can to make sure our pup comes into the world healthy, baby," he tried to soothe me. I just gave him a tight smile and nodded. Liam pushed his fingers into my hair, pulling it away from my face. "Why don't we go spend the rest of the night together upstairs? I'll have Missy watch the kids," he suggested. "All right," I said softly. Chapter 52. Missy. Maddox and I had lunch then got ready to swim. I could tell he wanted to ask about my conversation with Vlad, but I wasn't prepared to talk about it yet. He did his best to take my mind off the whole thing, which I appreciated. When I was coming down the stairs to meet Maddox outside, Lily stopped me. "Hey Missy," she said. "Hi, Lily," I said. "We have some more kids joining the pack. There are a couple of high school age ones." Would you mind maybe hanging out with them this afternoon? Making them feel welcome, she asked. Sure, I said. Maddox and I were just going to swim for a bit. They can come out and join us, I told her. She smiled, looking slightly relieved. You are such a good girl. I will bring them down in a bit, she said. I nodded and headed outside to Maddox. He sat on the edge of the pool, his legs already dipped into the water. There you are, he said as I came over to him. Sorry. I got stopped by Lily. You wouldn't mind some company, would you? I asked. His face dropped a bit. I guess not, he said. Apparently, we have some more wolves joining the pack, and Lily asked if I could make them feel welcome, I explained. Maddox leaned back on his arms, one of them posting behind me. Guess I can't really complain. If your mom hadn't asked you to do the same with us, I would never have met you, he said quietly. My cheeks heated up, and I looked away. Maddox sat up and slipped down into the water, splashing me playfully. I pursed my lips and pushed myself down into the water, going after him. He laughed and tried to swim away from me, but I was faster. I splashed him mercilessly, laughing at his retreat. He ducked under the water before I could catch him again. I searched the water as the surface settled, ready to strike as soon as he surfaced. The water broke behind me, and Maddox jumped out, grabbing onto my shoulders. He pulled me backward with him, submerging me by surprise. I wiggled out of his grip and kicked myself back to the air above. When we both came out of the water, Maddox was laughing triumphantly. That was sneaky, I gasped, dragging in air. You splashed me. All is fair in love and war, darling, he teased. I just rolled my eyes and pushed myself towards the side of the pool. The back door to the pack house opened, and Lily came out with 3 people, 2 girls and a guy. Missy, she called. Hey! I called back. Maddox swam up behind me. Lily brought the people over to the pool with us. This is Emmett, Alexandra, and Juliet, she said, introducing them. Hi. I'm Missy, and this is Maddox, I said. Call me, Julie, the taller girl said. Marcy is going to send out some snacks and drinks in a bit. Have fun, Lily said. She hurried away, clearly excited to be relieved of this task. You guys want to get in? I asked. Emmett smirked. He reminded me of Damien a little. He was large and bulky, but he had long hair pushed back away from his face. He dropped the towel in his hand and ran the remaining distance to the pool, jumping in with a large splash. He emerged from the water right behind me, scaring Maddox. I'm Emmett, he said. His confidence was apparent. You're in my personal space, I pointed out. He shrugged. Are you complaining? Emmett, her boyfriend is going to deck you if you don't back up, Julie said above us. Emmett looked up at her while I looked over his shoulder at Maddox, who looked irritated. Not my boyfriend, I said quickly. Really? Emmett said excitedly. Ignore him, we do, Julie said. She sat down on the pool's edge next to me. Come on, Allie, she said, pulling the quiet girl down to join us. She reached forward, flicking Emmett in the forehead. He rubbed the spot and scowled as he put some space between us. Maddox moved closer to me. If you two aren't dating, what are you? Emmett asked. Julie splashed him. Emmett, you have been in this pack less than a day. Can you not try and get in a girl's pants? She asked, annoyed. Sorry. He's kind of a slut. It's okay, I laughed. I'm definitely not gonna be the one he wants to chase. Why? Julie asked. Her dad is the alpha, and she has a warrior watching her 24/7, Maddox told them, his finger pointing to the wolf lying in the grass only 30 or so yards away from the pool, bored eyes watching all of us. Julie looked surprised. You are the alpha's kid? Wait, do you have an older brother? She asked. No, why? The firstborn child of an alpha is always a male. You are what, 16, 17? You should have an older brother getting ready to take over the pack, she said. I looked down into the water, trying to hide my embarrassment. I hated this part about meeting new people. Maddox placed a hand on my back under the water. There are exceptions to the rules, Maddox said, coming to my rescue. Well, if you ever want to have some fun, I don't mind an audience, Emmett said. I looked up at him to see him wiggling his eyebrows suggestively. I splashed him at the same time as Julie, and we both laughed. The afternoon was fun. We all hung out and played games in the water. I kept finding Maddox near me, especially when Emmett came close. We stayed in the pool until right before dinner. We all changed, then Maddox, and I met Felix, Jr., and Leo in the dining room for dinner. Liam and Lee were up in their room for the night, spending some time alone. I bet they just needed a break after all the stress they have been under. After dinner, Junior and Leo ran off to play with Delilah and Lucas some more, Felix following them dutifully. Maddox and I went up to my room, deciding to do our movie marathon upstairs so we wouldn't be watched all night. He seemed relieved I didn't suggest that Allie, Julie, or Emmett join us. We sat on my bed, a comfortable space between us. I picked the first movie, and we made it almost all the way through before my brothers crashed our party. Leo seemed determined to watch movies with us, planting himself between Maddox and me. Maddox. I wasn't surprised when little Liam and Leo came into their sister's room. She said they had been crawling into her bed every night since the kidnapping. Last night, Leo came in after Missy fell asleep, and we were lying together. He scowled at me but left the room, and us, alone. Having her with me last night and all day today made me feel calm. I haven't forgiven myself for what happened, and I wasn't going to let it happen again. We put on a kid-friendly movie with our new company. The movie was only playing for a couple of minutes when I heard little Liam say something. Hey, Maddox, he said. I looked at him, but he was staring at the TV. Did I imagine that? Maddox, he said again. Oh yeah, I can link. I looked over at Missy, who was being cuddled by Leo. Liam. I tried linking him back. Yeah, I can link you, but I have a question. All right. Will you train me? I looked at the kid again, confused by his question, but he continued watching the movie. Why? To protect people. Why? To protect people. What about your dad? He says I am too little, and I don't need to worry about it. But Leo got hurt, and Delilah was scared. I couldn't protect them. If your dad said no, I'm not sure I should, but... Please, Maddox. I want to be a strong alpha. You're strong, you keep Sissy safe. If only he knew how much better I needed to do in keeping her safe. I had to admire his tenacity, though. He was clearly still dealing with what happened, but he is trying to do something about his fear rather than hide from it. If Missy says it's okay, I will do it, I gave in. He was already going to have a natural ability in his blood to be strong and fast. At least if I helped him, I could make sure he didn't get hurt. His face grew into an excited grin. I held back a laugh, knowing he would probably be able to convince his sister. She loved him too much not to let him do the things he wanted to. Missy managed to convince her brothers to sleep in their rooms tonight. She left to tuck them in while I changed the movie for us. I think we might finally be rid of them for the night, although I just had to barter away the first slice of my birthday cake. She laughed as she crawled back into the bed. She pulled her blanket over her, getting comfortable again. Let me guess, Leo. Yeah, she giggled. Kid drives a hard bargain, but he is hard to say no to. You didn't tell me Junior can link already, I said. Oh, yeah. I forget sometimes. You know how Lee can heal people? I nodded. Well, I guess she comes from a pack where some wolves were blessed with special abilities. Liam took over the pack before they got married or something. So, some people here can do strange stuff. Junior has been able to link us all since he was really little. It took him a while to figure out how to direct it at a person, though, she explained. Wow, I said, amazed. Yeah, we have this teacher at school who can do superhuman math in his head in a split second. And a girl in the class below me can make things float, she said nonchalantly. She grabbed the remote and hit the play button. She tried to hide her yawn. Do you want me to let you go to bed? I asked quietly. No, she said. I'm not tired. But that was a lie because, within 10 minutes, she was slumped against me, sleeping soundly. My wolf preened in the delight of having her so close. I stayed still like that for most of the movie, wondering if I should push my luck and sleep in her bed again tonight. While the debate lingered in my head, there was a soft knock at her door. I turned my head to see Alpha leaning against the door frame. I went to move, and he shook his head. It's all right, he said softly. I can go, sir, I told him. You care for her, he observed. I nodded my head. He watched us for another minute, an oddly conflicted look across his face. I couldn't help but wonder what he was debating in his head as he looked at his daughter lying with a guy in her bed. I won't send you away as long as you respect her. Always, I told him. That means if she is mates with the other one, you respect that too, he said. I nodded. He stood up to his full height. Alpha Liam is an impressive man, not just physically. It's no wonder his pack holds so much respect for him and his family. Before he left, he added, and it would do you good to remember that her mother and I are right down the hall. My eyes went wide at his parting words, and all I could do was idiotically nod. Chapter 53. Azalea, I refuse, I said. Little Luna, if you insist on being all around the pack house during the day, you will not be walking everywhere, Liam argued. Especially not up and down the stairs. Declan and Robert will not be carrying me around like a child, I told him. No one thinks you are a child, he said. Your uncle said to reduce physical activity, not to cease it completely, I said. Last night Liam and I spent the evening just enjoying each other. We both needed some time to relax with our mate. Then, this morning he told me I am not allowed to walk around the pack house anymore. Then you need to choose whether you are in your office or downstairs, and I will take you there, he tried to compromise. I threw my hands up in the air in frustration as I turned on my heel, storming into the bathroom. I grabbed my hairbrush and started pulling it through my hair aggressively. After effectively making my hair a billowy cloud of soft frizz, I tried smoothing it out and pulling it back into a twisted braid. Liam finally stepped into the bathroom. He came up behind me, bringing his hands around my front and resting them across my stomach. Please don't be upset, he said softly. I looked at him through the mirror. I know you don't like it, but it's only for a little while longer. I know, I mumbled. I was not mad at Liam, not really. I know he can't understand how being the weak link in a pack where everyone is strong and capable feels. Liam naturally never felt like that. I know I am excited to have you in my arms more during the day, even if it is just to deliver you up and down the stairs, he said with a charming smile. We aren't going to make it to the stairs today if you continue to do that, I told him in a breathy voice, my core warming. What? This? He tried to play innocent as he continued. I tried to wiggle out of his grip as my nerve endings started to light up at his touch. Liam just chuckled, the deep vibration in his chest resonating into me from behind. Ah, ah, ah. Your escort isn't ready to let you go. Liam, I almost moaned. A light rapping on the door interrupted him. With slumped shoulders, he moved over to the door, opening it to find Leo standing there patiently. Hi Daddy, he said brightly. Hey, little L, what's going on? He asked. Everyone wants to go swimming, and Miss Lacey said she could wrap my cast up so no water can touch it, but I am supposed to ask you and Mommy if it's okay. So, can Miss Lacey do it? Please, he asked. Liam looked back over his shoulder at me. I shrugged, he wouldn't be in a cast if it were my decision. All right, sure. You have to get a new cast if it gets wet, remember that. Leo jumped up and down excitedly and bolted from the room. Liam spun around, his eyes darkening as they raked up and down me once more. Where was I? He said. Escorting me to my office so that I can call and speak to Theodore, I told him. His face dropped. I really don't want him near my pack house, Liam said, displeasure clear in his tone. He is our best bet at understanding what is happening with Hiram and how to help him. If you truly think we are headed for a war with the vampires, shouldn't we know as much as possible about how they can hurt us? Liam, I couldn't even feel him to heal him, I said. He knew I was right but didn't want to admit it. All right. But he will have guards on him the entire time he is here. He comes, looks at the wound, tells us everything, and leaves, Liam said. All right, I agreed. Let's go. Declan is downstairs already, Liam grumbled. Missy. I woke up stretching my limbs only for them to be met with others. My mind immediately changed from its sleepy haze to an alert reality. Last night I fell asleep with Maddox again, and he must still be here. Hey, he said. I flinched, not realizing he was awake. Good morning, I said. Sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep like that. It's okay, he said, smiling. He sat up, his soft hair a tousled mess on top of his head. He had a tired, placid smile on his face that was quite charming. I need to get down to morning training but didn't want to wake you. Oh, I said, sitting up. I can meet up with you after breakfast, though, he said. Grab me a muffin. Sure, I said. Almost automatically, Maddox leaned forward. We both froze. On my way down to the dining room, I passed Liam carrying 2 plates of food upstairs towards his office. He told me Lee and he were eating in her office this morning because he didn't want her up and down the stairs more than necessary. After Junior was born, I was surprised he didn't put an elevator into the pack house. Lee did not like being carried up and down the stairs when she got tired. Then it was worse when she was pregnant with Leo. Felix and Lacey sat with Leo and Junior in the dining room, Delilah and Lucas not around. I sat down with a plate of food while Leo was prattling on and on about going swimming later. Where are Delilah and Lucas? I asked Felix and Lacey. Lily and Mrs. Hale took them out for the day when Declan came to guard Luna today, Lacey explained. That's cool, I said, eating slowly. Maddox were still on my mind. I watched Lacey and Felix interact with Leo and Junior as we ate. Lacey was patient with both Felix and my brothers. Leo tried to finish quickly so he could swim faster, but she told him he had to wait until everyone was done. She complimented Felix nicely. She obviously didn't mind being the voice of both of them. His face wasn't as grim either, he even smiled at her fondly a few times. Why did everyone else make having a mate look so easy? Liam is head over heels for Lee. Damien dotes on Lily. Austin and Abigail are really sweet together. Does the mate bond just make everything easy? I honestly couldn't decide if I wanted to find my mate on my birthday or not. I care about V and Maddox and don't want to hurt either of them. When everyone was finished, Lacey took Leo into the kitchen to wrap his arm in some plastic wrap so he could swim. Felix went upstairs with Junior so he could change into his swim trunks. I went over to the breakfast bar to get Maddox something before heading out to meet him by the training ground. The quiet new girl was standing by the food, looking uncomfortable. "Hi," I said, coming up behind her. "Just getting down here." She nodded shyly. "You can help yourself. There is plenty," I told her. She nodded again. I reached next to her and grabbed a couple of berry muffins before grabbing a napkin to wrap them in. She shyly reached forward and grabbed one of the banana oat muffins. "Those are the best ones," I smiled at her. "It's Lee's recipe, and Miss Marcy makes them just as good." "The Luna," she whispered. I nodded my head. "She is an amazing cook but an even better baker. Liam likes to joke that her pastries will make him fat one day." "Oh," she said, her voice still barely audible. "Where are Julie and Emmett?" I asked. She shrugged. "Well, if you have no one to hang out with, you can come with me. I am gonna take Maddox some breakfast out at the training grounds, but I don't have any plans for the day." She gave me a slight grin and nodded her head. "Looks like I just made a new friend. Azalea, I would really appreciate anything you can help us with," I told Theo after he agreed to come to the pack today with an escort. "Of course, Luna. You have been so gracious, allowing me onto your land with little trouble. I am glad I can be of assistance," he said. Liam stood on the other side of my desk with his arms crossed. He didn't like this at all, but he knew we needed to find out as much as we could about vampires and how they affect us. Dr. Ron called him this morning to tell him that there are no documents left in the pack that he can find with any information referencing vampire bites. There are very few documents left regarding the previous war, according to Robert. "We will see you in a couple of hours then," I said before hanging up. Luckily, Declan was sitting outside so I could talk to my mate candidly. There will be 4 wolves escorting him to and from the inn, and we will have extra warriors at the clinic and with us. Damien and Felix will be with us too. If he can fight off all of that to hurt us, then we can't win a war anyway, I told him in a dry voice. "I don't like that he is sired to the vampire that is declaring war on my pack," he said. "You don't like that he is a vampire, period. You only view him as the enemy. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Plus, he rescued our children," I pointed out. "He may not be the enemy of our enemy. It could be a show to gain our trust. Warwick has waited all this time to come back for our pack and my family. He wouldn't rush things unless his hand is forced," Liam said. "But we cannot be for sure about any of that. We know almost nothing about Warwick. Maybe Theo can shed some light on his sire. If he is against his sire, maybe he would side with us. Having a vampire on our side couldn't hurt, I reasoned. Liam scowled and nodded. I could tell he was having trouble overcoming what has been ingrained in him about vampires. He turned like he was going to leave. Liam, remember you are not the alpha your father was. You do not have to lead in the same way, and you don't. That means that you don't have to have the same ideology too. Maybe werewolves and vampires don't have to be enemies. Maybe you can change this, I told him. His shoulders were taut beneath his shirt. I love you, little Luna. I will see you in a bit when Theodore arrives, he said before exiting my office. For now, I would just let him be. Declan entered my office now. So, what is on the agenda for today, Luna? He asked. So, what is on the agenda for today, Luna? He asked. Liam, you can put me down now, I said as we approached the front door. Theodore would be arriving any moment. I will put you down outside, he said. I rolled my eyes. I thought I was the one in a bad mood today. He raised an eyebrow at me. No wonder your father was always so grumpy. Declan never stops talking. I think he might ask more questions than Leo and Junior combined. I ranted. Liam chuckled. He has gotten more relaxed since retiring, I promise. He still knows what is going on, but I am guessing he is just trying to make this comfortable for you. Well, Declan is a sweet man, but it is incredibly hard to work through budgets for the inn when he is incessantly talking. Some things just require concentration, I pouted. We stepped out onto the porch, and Liam set me down gently. He wrapped his arm around my waist. A vehicle approached, followed by 2 wolves. 2 more warriors exited the vehicle along with Theo. Good afternoon, Alpha, Luna, he greeted us. Theodore, Liam greeted him sharply. Thank you so much for coming, Theo. We truly appreciate your help, I said with a sideways glance at my mate. Shall we take a look at your injured pack member? He asked, moving right to the point. Sure. The warriors will escort you over to our pack clinic, I said. Everyone loaded back into the vehicles, and Liam helped me into ours. Damien and Felix would be meeting us at the clinic. We drove the short distance to the clinic and met Dr. Ron in the waiting room. Liam must have warned him to cancel any appointments today because there was no one else here. Alpha, Luna, Dr. Ron greeted us. We can go straight back. Beta and Felix have already arrived. Liam and I led the way with Liam's uncle while Theo and the warriors followed us. Damien and Felix stood by the window of the room. They fell in line behind Liam and me as we passed. When we stepped inside the room, my stomach clenched at the sight of Hiram. He was paler than before, and the bite wound on his neck had taken on a nasty purple-brown color. As I thought, Theo said, approaching the bed. He inspected the wound without touching Hiram for a moment. This wound is from a very new vampire. How do you know? I asked. The coloration, the weak vitals, the extended coma. These are all indications of a new vampire's venom, he explained. So, what do we do? I questioned. Unfortunately, I am not sure there can be much done. I know of a few instances where the venom was able to be extracted from the wound, but those were fairly quick after the bite was inflicted. I bet if we were to check Mr. Hiram, he would have some blackened veins throughout his body. The poison has spread by now, and he will probably not make it. So, the venom of new vampires is essentially fatal. What of older vampires? Liam asked. As vampires live, their venom morphs, so to speak. At first, their bites are essentially fatal. A human bitten by a vampire will die within 36 hours of the bite if the transition does not begin. Clearly, wolves can withhold longer. But after about a year, the venom becomes less poisonous to other supernatural creatures. Instead, it can take away the abilities that come with their races. For a werewolf, it can weaken them, taking away strength and heightened senses. If the vampire is old enough, it could even sever the link between man and wolf. It may still kill the werewolf, but they are more likely to survive a bite from an older vampire. What our venom loses in poison concentration, our bodies gain in strength, speed, and other abilities. A paralyzing numbness shuddered through me, crawling across my skin uncomfortably. Hiram was going to die, and we couldn't stop it. Liam was stiff next to me. How do we treat these injuries? Liam asked. For a bite from a youngling, flush the system. I believe it is called dialysis in human terminology. You need to remove the venom. In theory, a vampire could retract the venom themselves. For a bite from a mature vampire, prayer. I am not aware of anything that can be done to help, although flushing their system may lessen any damage. In most cases I have seen, they have kept the victim comfortable until they have woken up. Theodore had a sad look on his face. Which side are you in this war? Damien demanded. War. Do not play at innocence. Warwick has proclaimed war on Blood Eclipse by attacking our pack and kidnapping my children. This is all the proof I need to know he is behind this, Liam gritted. If Warwick is coming for your pack, one bitten warrior and an unsuccessful kidnapping will not be the end. He will come for everything you hold dear, Theo said contemplatively. I will not be on the side of my kinship, but I do not wish to be on yours either. I have no part in this war. You chose sides the minute you agreed to come to this pack house and help us, Damien said. The room was quiet with his dark implication. Chapter 54. Lacey. Alpha Liam wants me to present all the information I have compiled and the possible connections I have made to everyone all at once. It took me a few days, but I may have a few solid theories about what is happening outside of our pack. I walk around the conference room table, setting out the binders that Felix helped me to prepare last night with all the information organized. I am nervous, to say the least. When I worked for my previous Alpha, he had me help with this sort of task frequently, but I only ever had to brief him or a few others, never an entire room full of pack leadership. Alpha and Luna arrive first, with Felix trailing closely behind. It was only minutes before the room was filling up. Lily and Damien, Austin, Jacob, Sean, and a few others I did not know the names of yet. Finally, Abe joined the group, and all the seats were filled. I stood patiently across from Alpha Liam, waiting for him to start the meeting. We all know why we are here. Lacey, if you will tell us what you have found, please, he said. Everyone in the room turned their attention on me, and I swallowed, trying to rid my throat of its dryness. Felix gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. With a long exhale, I began. I have compiled all the information we have gotten from the misplaced wolves that have been taken in by both Blood Eclipse Pack and Alpha Langston's pack, Serenity Waters. I have coupled that with the information that Beta Damien could garner about the area of all the affected packs. I mapped all the attacks looking for a pattern. The only pattern I was able to discern was that these attacks were concentrated past the eastern mountains and were only occurring to remotely located groups of less than 200. We have reliable information to identify 37 attacks across 6 months. While we cannot be precise, we can estimate a survival rate among these groups of around 15%. Once I began speaking, everyone was listening intently. My nervousness went away the more I explained. I turned to human forms of news reporting to look for signs of any other similar activity that could actually be the same types of attacks. I suspect another 15 attacks of a similar operation. How sure are you about these additional attacks? Alpha Liam asked, idly flipping through the binder in front of him. Luna was reading a page with intent concentration. If I had to apply a number to my confidence? Well, I thought for a moment. I would say I am 80% sure these could be similar attacks. Alpha nodded and said nothing else, so I continued. While I was looking for information in human news outlets that could be veiled supernatural activity, I came across another trend that I believe to be connected. It took me some time to match up the dates and the route along the map, but there are an increased number of missing persons reports in the denser populated areas near the packs that were destroyed within a couple of days of the attacks. Of course, this is again a guess because we cannot be sure of the exact date of each of these attacks. He's creating an army, Alpha muttered. All attention turned to him, but he was silent for a moment. Lacey, have the disappearances moved past the region where these attacks were happening? Luna asked. I nodded slowly. From the pattern that I believe to be happening, the attacks on packs lessened as the culprit moved past the eastern mountains, but the disappearances continued. The packs on this side of the mountains are spread much further with bigger territories and larger populations, Beta said. Alpha nodded. So what? He changed his plans after he got to the other side of the mountains and just went along kidnapping people? Gamma asked. No, Beta said. The packs were just the beginning, and he only went after the ones he was confident he could eliminate easily. They probably have no patrols or standing guard at all times. Lacey, how close is the last area of increased disappearances? Alpha asked, his eyes skimming through the information in front of him. Travel by car would put the closest area about a day away from us, sir, I said quietly. How many largely populated areas are between that and our pack territory? Depending on the route chosen, there are 6 to 8 areas he could attack before reaching our pack territory, I told him. Alpha nodded his head again. Lacey, how long do you believe he is spending in the populated areas? Luna asked, looking up from what she was reading. From the times reported as last seen, 4 to 5 days at most. By the time a trend can be established, he leaves and they slow once more. Many of these places have rules restricting reporting to 24 to 48 hours after a disappearance, so the reporting takes time before it is recognized. What do you think, Felix? Alpha asked. I knew Alpha Liam held Felix in high regard, but openly speaking his opinion in such a crucial matter openly told me Felix was well respected as pack leadership even without a title. The rogues weren't supposed to be peaceful, he said. What do you mean? Alpha asked. He let them escape. If this is a vampire as we suspect, he could have tracked them all down and killed them. If his goal was hurting our population, he could have done that systematically with these small packs. He wanted to make rogues. He wanted them to move west and begin overwhelming packs on this side of the country, Felix clarified. You think the wolves seeking refuge after so long was unintentional? Beta asked. Felix nodded. Abe, what are your thoughts? Alpha asked. Abe looked up at me before looking at Alpha. I think you are right. I think he is making an army. All of these vampires would be young, though. They would not have the speed or strength to overwhelm a werewolf, so I wonder if he has others up his sleeve, Abe answered. Alpha was quiet for a few more minutes, chewing on the inside of his cheek while his eyes listlessly scanned over the open page of the binder in front of him. Thank you, Lacey. You did very well, he said, looking up. Everyone is dismissed for now. Damien, we should talk. He stood up then helped Luna to her feet. I bowed my head in respect. My eyes met with Felix's as I rose, catching a proud grin on his face reserved only for me. Missy. Part of me wishes my birthday would come already. Maddox and Vlad are dizzying. Vlad has been coming by the pack house almost every day to make amends for what he said before. He brought me flowers one day and lunch another. He offered to help watch the kids even. I didn't know how I was supposed to feel, and none of my usual methods brought me any clarity. I missed Lemon. I wished I could just go to the inn and hang out with her for a few days, but I don't think Liam and Lee would let me after the attack. Maddox has been sleeping in my room every night. We always end up hanging out after dinner or after he is done training with Felix. One night he came in as I was headed into the bathroom to shower. When I was done, he was passed out across the bed. It wasn't awkward or strange in any way, it just was. I was a bit worried that Liam would find out and freak out, but Maddox said he thinks we are okay. I did feel a pang of guilt when I saw Vlad. I still wasn't sure where we stood. But having Maddox around made me feel safe after everything, and I didn't want to be alone all the time. I sit on the front porch of the pack house with Ali waiting for Sol and Julie. We all decided to go to the movies today. Liam said he would send down someone to escort us, and they would drive us. Other than my constant escort, it feels nice to be doing normal teenage stuff outside the pack house. Before all the new pack members, Vlad and I would hang out, or I would spend time with my siblings. No one else really bothered to try to be my friend after a while. The front door opens, Sol and Julie coming outside chatting away. They were followed by Maddox, who had a stupidly large grin on his face. "What are you smiling about?" I asked as I stood up. The front door opens, Sol and Julie coming outside chatting away. They were followed by Maddox, who had a stupidly large grin on his face. "What are you smiling about?" I asked as I stood up. "I just got a new assignment," he said proudly. I raised an eyebrow. Apparently, all the extra training with Felix is paying off. "What do you mean?" Sol asked. "Alpha just put me in charge of Missy's detail," he exclaimed. "Wait, how?" I asked. "Felix recommended me. I guess Alpha wants someone to be watching you permanently, just like Luna. Felix thought I would be the best fit since we are the same age and grade. Plus, we're friends, so they don't think you will complain," he told us. "It's going to be mad awkward when your dad finds out you're dating your bodyguard," Julie teased. Sol snickered. "We aren't dating," I said quickly. That just resulted in more giggling. I looked at Ali, who just shrugged. "Let's just go," I said, trying to get everyone off Maddox and me. Maddox held up the keys to Liam's SUV. "Who is riding shotgun?" "Maddox." I was not expecting Alpha Liam to put me in charge of protecting Missy again. It has not been that long since the rogue attack. He hasn't said anything to me since that night that he permitted me to be with Missy, and I hoped this meant that I was forgiven for leaving the kids alone that day. The more time Missy and I spend together, the more I am sure that she is my mate. Everything feels so right when I am with her. After we went to the movies, the girls wanted dinner, so that is where we went. When we got back to the pack house, little Liam found me right away. "Maddox, you promised," he said. "I know. I had an important job today, but how about we go out to the training ground right now?" I said. He squinted his eyes at me but then nodded hesitantly. "Meet me at the back door in 5 minutes. Still training my little brother?" Missy linked me. I turned around to see her standing at the bottom of the stairs, watching our exchange. Yep. He is determined. I promised him we would go out to the training ground after dinner, but that was before your dad had me go with you today, I told her. Well, I am going to go up to my room for the rest of the night. Have fun with Junior, she said, turning around and heading up the stairs. I swiveled on my heel and headed right for the kitchen to grab some water bottles before I met Junior at the back door. He had a determined look on his face as we walked out towards the training ground. So far, the only thing I really taught him was to punch and kick properly. What are you going to teach me tonight? He asked. I thought for a moment. Why don't we work on some falls? Falls? He asked. Yeah, I told him. If you learn to fall correctly, you can control your body as you go down, and you can keep from getting hurt. But if I am winning a fight, I don't want to fall down, he said, confused. That's mostly true. But you won't win every fight, especially while you are learning. And, sometimes, you can use falling to your advantage, I told him. Really? He asked. I led us over to the grass outside the sparring ring, where the ground was a bit softer. Yeah. Let me show you, I said. Chapter 55. Missy. Ding. Ding. My phone goes off next to me as I lay on my bed writing in my diary app. I look over to see a message from Vlad. V, hey, can we talk? Me right now? V, yet. Me, I guess. V, come meet me at the cabin please? I look out the window. It's starting to get dark, and there is probably no way of me getting out of this pack house unnoticed. Me, I don't know if I can get out. V, just slip out. With a heavy sigh, I locked my tablet and set it under my pillow. V and I needed to talk instead of this awkward pleasantry thing we have been doing. I should also probably tell him that Maddox will now be around pretty much all day for the foreseeable future. I wouldn't be surprised if Liam kept someone watching me until he passes over the alpha title. I don't want to get him in trouble, but I hoped that Maddox is still outside with Junior as I set out down the hall. I have no such luck as Junior is climbing the stairs towards me, looking dirty and grass-stained. Hey, bud. Where's Maddox? I ask. He went to shower. He made me fall, he said grumpily. He pushed past me without another word. If Maddox is in the shower, then I can probably get out of here on the down low. I silently descend the stairs, making myself as small as possible. I slip out the back door and towards the tree line. Just when I thought I was in the clear, someone clears their voice behind me. I stop dead in my tracks and turn to see Maddox standing behind me with his arms crossed. I thought you were staying in your room the rest of the night, he said with a raised eyebrow. I am just going for a run, I said, not completely lying. You know Alpha doesn't want you going anywhere alone, he said. It's fine. Go shower. You look like a mess after training with Junior, I said. I did not need Maddox tagging along to meet up with Vlad. Missy, no. I already let your dad down once, and I am not going to do it again. If you're going out, I am going with you, he said, getting irritated now. I don't need to be babysat, I feebly argued. What has gotten into you? What is with this weird 180? I'm going to meet Vlad, okay? I admitted. I looked away from him, suddenly not able to meet his eyes. I could feel the air thicken between us, we were both silent for a moment. Fine, I'll go with you, he finally said, his voice somber now. No, it isn't necessary. I wouldn't ask you to do that, I said quietly. Heavy footsteps stopped in front of me, and I looked up slowly to see Maddox giving me a steadfast gaze. You aren't going by yourself, so it's me, or I call a warrior to escort you. It seems to me you don't want anyone to know where you are going, so the choice is yours, he said. I weighed my options for a moment. I didn't want anyone to know where the cabin was, but Maddox was sure better than anyone else. I sighed, fine. Come with me, but I need to be alone with Vlad. Fine, he said, sounding a bit bitter. Lead the way. He walked past me, into the trees in the direction I was initially headed. I wondered if I should text Vlad that Maddox was going to be following along. He would be irritated, I'm sure. I didn't get much time to think it over when Maddox called, coming. I jogged to catch up with him. Sorry, I muttered. Where are we going? He asked. Somewhere no one else knows about, I said. And where is it exactly? He asked. We'll get there faster if we shift, I told him. He nodded his head and turned around, pulling his shirt over his head. When he started to drop his shorts, I got the hint. I hurried behind a nearby tree and pulled my own clothes off quickly. I left them in a pile and shifted. When I stepped out from the tree, Maddox was waiting for me. Lead the way, he said. We both took off deeper into the trees. When we get there, can you maybe stay outside? I asked. He gave me a sideways look. I guess. Where is there? I was quiet for a minute. He was going to see it when we got there, so what was the harm in telling him? An old cabin we found, I told him. Are you sure it's safe? It doesn't belong to someone. About as safe as anywhere else, I guess. Fine, I'll stay outside, but you are going to let me check everything out first. All right, I agreed. As we ran, Maddox was scanning the woods. His cautiousness was making me feel uneasy as we went. Before long, we were nearing the cabin. It's right up ahead. I need to shift and dress, I linked him. Wait, he said, slowing down. Maddox started circling closer to the cabin, sniffing the surrounding area like he was searching for something. Stay close, he said as he moved. I followed behind him, trying to figure out if he actually smelled something or if he was just checking around the cabin. We made a wide arching path around the cabin before he started moving closer. Maddox, what is wrong? I asked him. I smell something. It's faint, but it's... I don't know, wrong somehow, he told me. When we got close to the front again, Vlad was standing by the front door, looking around. When his eyes landed on me, he looked a little relieved until he saw Maddox. What's going on? He called. I moved away from Maddox, heading for a tree to change behind. I changed quickly, pulling on clothes and dashing out from behind the tree. Sorry, I said, stopping in front of him. I can't leave the pack house alone. His eyes moved to Maddox before coming back to me. Is he staying then? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, but he's going to stay out here. Missy, I don't think we should be here. I can't figure out what this scent is, and it's barely there, Maddox linked me. I turned to him now. No one knows this is out here. We have been out here a dozen times, I told him. That was before rogues were pushing at our borders constantly, he argued. Please, Maddox. Just give me a little bit, and I will go back with you, I begged. What's wrong? V asked behind me. Maddox is worried. He smells something off out here, I told him. He doesn't need to be. No one knows about this, and nothing has been touched, he said. I looked back at Maddox. The look on his face, even in wolf form, told me he was nervous about this. I walked over to him and brought my hand up to the side of his muzzle. His eyes went wide like he wasn't sure. It's okay, Maddox. I trust you and him. Just howl if we need to leave, and I will come running, I promise, I linked him. His head dipped once, and he turned away from me, moving into the trees around the cabin. I returned to the cabin doorway where V was waiting for me. He gave me a tight smile before stepping aside to let me in the door. I stepped into the cabin that I hadn't seen in weeks. Nothing had changed other than it looked like something had been thrown at the wall, making a small crater in the wood. V shut the door behind him and stood with his back to it, hands in his pocket as he gave me a sheepish look. So, what did you want to talk about? I asked quietly. I miss you, he said, his tone tender. He looked down at the floor, seeming nervous. Usually, he was so confident. I wasn't really the one with a problem. I replied. I missed him too, but I wasn't sure if it was him I was missing or how certain I was about him before Maddox and everyone else arrived. I know, and I should have never made my problems yours, he said softly. So, where does that leave us? I asked, holding my breath. He was quiet for a moment. Where do you want it to leave us? It was my turn to look away. I couldn't answer him honestly because I didn't know. After a minute, he continued, I am sure all of this had made things a little more difficult for you. But, Missy, I really love you and never meant to hurt you. I have no doubt you are my mate and hate myself for letting you down that day. He closed the distance between us, reaching his hand up to hold the side of my face gently. I brought my eyes to his, recognizing the sincerity in his gaze. V, I trailed off. How could I tell him that things weren't the same and I wasn't as sure as he was? I couldn't just break his heart and push him away like that. V, I trailed off. How could I tell him that things weren't the same and I wasn't as sure as he was? I couldn't just break his heart and push him away like that. He brought his other hand up, completely cradling my face now. It's all right. I get it. It's my own fault. But if you aren't going to push me away, I will not stop fighting for you. I don't care when your birthday is or when we will know, I love you, Missy. He leaned his forehead against mine, and I closed my eyes. Where was this V when I was freaking out in the safe room or after when I was all alone? We stood like that for what felt like ages, unmoving. Finally, he pulled back and placed a soft kiss on my forehead. I'm sure he is anxious out there. I don't know what he could smell out here, he said. I'll let you get back. But before you go, can I ask you something? Sure, I whispered, my voice not working properly. Let me take you out before your birthday. I want to celebrate with you before it's officially the day, and we know one way or another, he requested. I nodded my head. Sure, I said, trying to smile. He smiled with a slightly relieved look on his features. You should get back to the pack house. I am sure your dad won't be happy with you gone all hours of the night, he said, releasing me. I nodded. He stepped aside, and I moved towards the door. When I stepped out into the cool summer night breeze, Maddox was waiting right outside, facing the trees around the cabin. His head turned, looking at me over his shoulder. I headed down the steps and strode towards the trees so I could strip from my clothes and shift. Once I shifted, I met Maddox back in front of the cabin. V stood on the steps watching us. With one last lingering look at him, Maddox and I took off back to the pack house. Azalea. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, I leaned against the counter with one hand on my belly. This child was really giving me a hard time today. The cramping along the side of my stomach was excruciating, and my stretching skin was making me itch all over. Liam entered the bathroom quietly. The only signal of him coming into the room was his scent growing more potent. He wrapped his arms around me and under my belly. "Lean back," he whispered into my ear. I did as he said, my body just obeying him. As I leaned back against him, his hands lifted the weight of my pregnancy, and I sighed in euphoric relief. "Better," he whispered. "MMMHMM," I hummed, enjoying the lessened weight and pressure from my back. He chuckles softly. "How's my pup?" "Doing good," I said. "She likes when her daddy holds her." I could feel his smile grow behind me. He liked when I referred to the pup as she. "Missy ran off with Maddox a bit ago," he said, feigning nonchalance. "Are you worried?" I asked. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "Do you regret letting them stay together in her room?" "No," he said. "I think he is good for her." "Me too," I said. "I really like him." "There isn't much time left before her birthday," he said. "She will be of mating age." He said this like I didn't already know. He and Gavin were probably upset that their pup was about to be an adult. "Liam, why doesn't Vlad have a definitive scent?" I asked him. I had been wondering if this was related to Abraham knowing about the vampire bite. He sighed, cuddling his face into my neck. "Abraham came to the pack after his mate was killed and Vlad was hurt. Vlad was bitten by a vampire. Abraham hasn't seen him shift since. After everything Theodore has told us, I would imagine he was bitten by an older vampire but has lost connection with his wolf." "How sad," I mused. He nodded. Chapter 56. Liam. Rage. Frustration. Irritation. Displeasure. Exasperation. Desperation. My normally sweet and happy mate has been a tidal wave of angry emotions for days now. Between the health precautions she needs to take with her pregnancy and having my father and Declan constantly around, I am worried she is going to snap. Her emotions are becoming so loud and potent, I am having trouble focusing on my own responsibilities. Felix is doing a great job handling the kids during the day, and his mate has even been assisting. Luckily, the boys, Delilah, and Lucas all seem pretty content with the arrangement. It is good too because rogues are coming around once again. We have yet to see anything serious, but it has Damien and me on high alert at all times. Every time Missy leaves the pack house, there is a weight in the bottom of my stomach until I see her safely back, even though Maddox is sticking to her like glue. I cannot bring myself to stop her from spending time with other kids her age, though, after so long of only being friends with Vlad, it is refreshing to see her coming out of her shell with others. "Just so you know, Azalea just booted your father from her office." He is standing outside with a vein in his forehead, ready to pop at her refusal to open the door. Austin links me. Moments later, he is knocking on the door as he opens it, holding 2 boxed lunches. "Miss Marcy has been kind enough to send lunch up to me so I can take it to Azalea most days." I hung my head. "I'm going," I said. "I need to find a replacement quickly before my father and Declan send her over the edge. They both mean well but were never groomed to be warriors, they are leaders more accustomed to giving orders than following them." I grabbed the food from Austin as he gave me a commiserate smile. I hurried down the hall to find my father pounding on Azalea's office door. "Open the door, girl," he called. "Dad," I said, turning his attention. Son, you need to get your mate in line. This is outrageous. I am the former alpha of this pack, and I will not be thrown out of the current Luna's office. I interrupted. Dad, Azalea and I oversee the pack. She also runs the inn, and she is very pregnant with my pup. I need you to chill out. She is not used to an imposing presence. She has had Felix with her for years now, and they have developed an easy relationship. I tried to placate my father, but his face told me he did not care how my mate wanted things, he would be doing things how he wanted. If I am here to ensure her safety, then she cannot interfere with that job, he growled. I get that, Dad, but Felix did that for the last 6 years without getting on her nerves every day. She's tired and irritable, and I would like to keep the pup in her as long as possible. So, why don't you go for the rest of the day, and I will keep her with me, I said, not bowing down to his authority. He turned on his heel and stormed down the hall. I sighed and knocked lightly on the door. He's gone, baby. Let me in, I linked her. The door flew open, and Azalea had an indignant look on her face. I swear to the moon goddess, Liam, I cannot take them anymore, she thundered. I know, baby. I know, I said. She turned and waddled over to her couch, lowering herself down awkwardly. I couldn't help but smile at her pregnant ambling. Do you want some lunch? I asked her as I moved over to join her. Is it pizza? She asked, sniffing towards the boxes I held. I looked down at the on top labeled grilled chicken. I set that one down next to me and felt relieved when the second box was labeled pizza. I handed it over to her, and she seemed to brighten up a little. She tore open the box and greedily began to devour the steaming dough. She did a cute little shimmy as she continued to chew her lunch. Better? I asked, popping my own lunch box open. A little, she said. Are you any closer to finding a replacement for Felix? I swallowed guiltily. The truth was Damien and I were not satisfied with anyone on the short list of potential candidates from our pack. They were all missing something essential that we haven't found outside of Felix. Not yet. But I am working on it. And the rogue attack last night? She questioned. Only 12. We spared one and have them sequestered in prison to question. I should have a report by dinner, I told her. She nodded her head, chewing her pizza thoughtfully. Anything else keeping you busy for the rest of the day? Her voice was deceptively airy now. I raised an eyebrow. Should something be keeping me busy? I can think of a few things to occupy you, my alpha. If you aren't too busy, that is, she said, her tone husky. I could feel her desire now through our bond. Liam, she moaned my name, her head falling back. My favorite, I growled. I chuckled as she tried to take what she wants. Gavin used the opportunity to push forward, taking me out of the driver's seat. Chapter 57. Liam sat in front of me with terror on his features. He held my face in his hands as he whispered soothing words to me. I can barely focus on what he says though, the pain in my sides and belly too much at the moment. This felt exactly like a contraction, and I am terrified, it's too soon. I need the baby to stay in a few more weeks. Come on, Liam said. My ears perked up at his words. What? I asked, and he moved next to me and gently scooped me up into his arms. My uncle is expecting us, he said, and he glided from my office. I can barely comprehend the passing halls of the pack house as he carries me out. Another wave of pain hit me, and I tried to stifle my cry. I can feel Liam tense around me. Just hang in there, little Luna, he said in a low voice. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe through the pain. Goddess, please do not let this be the time. There is no way the baby is ready. I know we arrived at the clinic when the cool air kisses my slightly sweaty skin, the combination of pain and warm summer air causing my perspiration. Alpha, Luna, I hear Dr. Ron. Liam doesn't stop moving, so I know he is headed straight to a room. He set me down on a bed and reluctantly moves aside. Hello, Azalea, Dr. Ron said. I see we are having some pain. I nod, still holding my stomach. All right, I want you to try and just breathe as evenly as you can while I check some things, okay? I nod again. First, he felt my belly and sides, pushing in a couple of spots. Then he got out the fetal monitors and hooked them up to me. Another wave of pain swept through me, and Liam is by my side, holding my hand as I cry out. Dr. Ron watched the monitor for a few minutes as another wave of pain courses through me, this one much less than the previous ones. Liam grew more worried as we sit there. Finally, his uncle turned to us with a calm look on his face. Good news, you aren't in labor just yet. These are false contractions, he explained. Liam didn't seem assuaged as his uncle continues, your body is preparing itself for the actual birth. These are short periods of fake contractions to ready you. Well, they feel pretty real, I said. He gave a small laugh. Yes, they can. I am going to get you something to relax, but you can go home after that. Let's keep off our feet for the rest of the day. He looked up at Liam, who nodded. I'll be right back, he said before leaving the room. Liam looked at me with worry still in his eyes. His hand came up to my face, pushing some stray hair back behind my ear. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded my head. His thumb gently rubbed my cheekbone. You scared me. I'm sorry, I apologized. Liam leaned forward and rested his forehead against mine. I just want you and our pup to be healthy, he whispered. I wrapped my arms around his neck, and he pulled me close. Dr. Ron came back in, ending our moment. All right, Luna, I want you to take this and relax for the rest of today. No work and no little pups, okay, he said. Sure, I said, taking the tiny pill cup from him. Liam turned around to the sink in the room and got a glass of water, bringing it to me to take the medicine. We want to be careful with these types of pains, he continued. I would like to watch them. They can come about from excess stress but also from nothing at all. It is imperative that if you begin to feel as if you need to push, you call me right away. Liam nodded as he listened intently. I assume you can recognize that feeling. Oh, yeah, I said, recalling the first 2 pregnancies. I remember. Good. That will be a definite indicator that the contractions are real. You should also time them. These false contractions may not come in even or descending intervals as real ones will. All right, I said, trying to keep the worry out of my voice for Liam's sake. I will let you 2 go for now. Please call me if you have any concerns, he said, turning to Liam. Thanks, Liam said. Not even waiting for his uncle to leave the room, he bent down to pick me up. I wrapped my arms round his neck to make his job a bit easier. We left the room, passing a wheelchair that was left outside, probably for Liam to push me out of here in, but my alpha-blooded mate wouldn't do that. Liam was quiet the entire way back to the pack house. When we arrived, Felix was waiting in the foyer, and I could hear a movie playing in the lounge just behind him. Can you contact my mother? Tell her I need her to grab the boys for the night, he asked Felix. Felix nodded as Lacey came out of the lounge to join us. Is everything all right, she asked, seeing Liam holding me. Yet, just a little scare, I tried to reassure her. Azalea needs to rest for the rest of the night, Liam told the couple. It's best if the boys go to their grandparents. Missy can choose what she would like to do, she is old enough to entertain herself. Felix nodded, and Liam began to move again, taking me upstairs. Lacey. My heart clenched as I watched Alpha ascend the stairs with his Luna in his arms. He looked scared almost, and I wonder what happened to worry him so much. It clearly concerned the pup, but I wasn't sure what it was. I turned to Felix, and I was pretty sure he was already linking the former Alpha about Leo and Junior. I waited for him to be done, and his eyes came back to me. The smallest hint of a smile graced his lips. He always had the same look when his eyes would come to me. It made my heart beat faster seeing his intimidating, stoic expression shatter just by my presence. Should we pack them an overnight bag? I asked him. He shook his head. Do they have things there? He shook his head yes. Will they be coming by to get the boys? He shook his head yes again. I am resigned to the yes and no questions with him, especially when we aren't alone. He seems most comfortable communicating this way when it doesn't concern matters of pack safety. We both went back into the lounge where Junior and Leo were watching a movie on the Discovery Channel. Will you have anything else to do after they leave? I asked idly. Of course, we spend every night together now that we live together, but I think the stress of the impending war affects him. He hasn't been sleeping well. Plus, we haven't had much time to ourselves outside of nights since he began looking after the boys. Felix shook his head, and his eyes held curiosity. I was thinking maybe we could go out together, I said. He was quiet for a minute, so I continued, like a date. He crossed his arms over his chest, looking like he was considering something. Be ready in 30 minutes, he linked without moving a muscle. My face broke out into a large grin. I raised up onto my tiptoes and left a soft kiss on his cheek before dashing out of the room. Now that I was much more used to Felix and his eccentricity, I found his quiet, surly demeanor funny and cute. As I was finishing up in the bathroom, Felix came in, pulling his plain grey cotton t-shirt over his head. He went to the closet, pulled out a simple black, short-sleeve button-up, and put it on. He was a man of straightforward taste, but he was still swoon-worthy. When he saw me, I could see his eyes darken a bit. I opted for a deep red t-shirt dress with a cinched waist. We left the pack house and headed towards the nearest city, where he chose a restaurant to take me to for dinner. It was an Italian place, and we ended up having to wait for a table. I don't think he did it on purpose, but Felix made others nervous as we stood there in comfortable silence. It was comical because he was soft and sweet, albeit quiet and set in his ways, to me. Our waiter was a kid no older than 17, and he was clearly terrified of my mate. After we ordered our food, I sat there trying to pinpoint exactly what about him was so terrifying. The scar, it finally occurred to me. Felix raised an eyebrow at my sudden words. I think it's your scar. I mean clearly combined with your size, I said. He continued to give me a questioning look. The reason you come off so intimidating. How did you get it? His face grew solemn for a moment, but he answered, I killed the man who killed my mate. The witch. Felix nodded. He gave you that scar. Once again, nodding. Did it bring you closure? He paused for a moment before shaking his head this time. The waiter brought our food and left quickly, not looking like he wanted to conversate much with Felix. We began to eat in companionable silence. There was something nagging at me for days now, and my wolf was urging me to bring it up. I wasn't sure how he would react. Finally, my wolf won the battle inside me. "Felix, do you want to have pups?" I asked. His fork stopped midair between his plate and mouth. His eyes moved from his plate in slow motion to me, his mouth still partially open to accommodate his fork that was now stalled on its journey. I grew warm in my face as he sat up straight and lowered his fork. He regarded me silently for a few minutes. "It's okay if you don't," I said quietly, looking back down at my plate. Harry had gotten sick not long after I was able to mark him. We never even got to discuss having pups, even if I had imagined them. After he passed, I just figured it would always be out of my grasp. But now that I have found my second chance, things have changed. Plus, spending so much time with the Alpha's boys has ignited a slight pup fever in me, and I can't help but imagine what a tiny baby Felix would look like. "Pups," he said softly. I nodded my head. "Yeah, I just was wondering." I looked back up into his stoic face. Ever so slowly, he nodded. It took me a minute to realize what he was telling me, but when I did, excitement burst through me. "Really?" I asked quickly. He nodded again. I trying to keep back happy tears. When?" I asked him. "When do you want?" he linked. "When do I want to?" As crazy as it felt, I knew I would have his pups tomorrow if I could. "Anytime," I told him. "How many?" I asked him. He held up 2 fingers. "1 boy, 1 girl," he said. "We don't really get to pick that part," I said. He just shook his head. "1 boy and 1 girl," he repeated. I just giggled. "All right. We can talk about that later," I said with a smile. 2 kids with Felix sounded like perfection. After dinner, Felix and I went mini golfing. It was hilarious to watch him hunched over with the tiny golf club each time it was his turn. He still ended up beating me, although we were both terrible. When we got back to the pack house, we settled down in bed together when he jumped up. There were rogues at the border once more, and he went to check on the former Alpha and Luna's home. The attack must have been handled quickly because he was with me a little more than an hour later. I cuddled into his embrace, happy knowing our future was headed in a direction we were both excited about. The rest of the audiobooks will be uploaded in the next episode. Join us on Patreon to listen to more unlimited audiobooks.